I'm Matt Crane,
I'm Michelle Libby.
and we're interested in understanding how human rights organizations mobilize consensus around human rights issues and then mobilize people to act. And we do this by running experiments trying to understand how human rights organizations' messaging strategies actually work. What we found is that human rights organizations use a variety of different messaging techniques to try to raise awareness and mobilize people to act. They try to generate empathy by telling a personal story about an individual who's at risk, or they provide information in order to raise awareness and knowledge about the scope of an issue, or they try to increase our sense of agency about what we can do to actually deal with the problem. Our previous research has shown that each of these strategies individually is very effective at mobilizing awareness or consensus, but only the personal frame focused on an individual at risk is effective at getting people to really mobilize to act, to do something, maybe sign a petition, something like that. However, what we didn't know and what human rights organizations really need to know is how these messaging strategies work in combination, in large part because that's in the real world how human rights organizations' strategies tend to work.
So, what we did to examine this is we conducted another survey experiment wherein participants were randomly assigned to see one of a few different options of human rights campaign message. They either saw a campaign message that used just one of the different framing strategies, so a personal frame or a motivational frame or an informational frame, or they were assigned to see a campaign on the same issue but that employed multiple framing strategies at the same time, so both a personal story and a motivational frame, for example. So what we found was that, again, the personal frame by itself is actually the most effective, that individuals who see a personal story about a victim leads to a higher emotional connection with the audience and the subject of the human rights campaign, and it leads to higher levels of consensus that a human rights violation has occurred and a greater willingness to actually take direct action to stop or prevent future violations from occurring in the future. But what we also found, which was not what we expected, was that the combination of multiple frames at the same time neither helped the human rights initiative nor did it undercut it. So for individuals who saw a campaign with multiple frames in it, it did not lead to higher levels of consensus or higher levels of willingness to participate in a human rights action, but it also did not detract from the power of the personal frame on its own. So what we think this means for human rights organizations, for practitioners, is that a personal narrative really does appear to be critical. This building of connection and empathy within the audience appears to be very powerful and important for building consensus and action on human rights issues. But human rights organizations can continue to do like they have been doing for some time and employ multiple strategies, framing strategies at the same time without fear that it's actually going to hurt their goals. And our third takeaway, and we think the biggest message of our work is that we really want to make a call for the academy and for the practitioner communities to be working more in synergy with one another, to understand under what conditions human rights organizations, advocacy efforts will work, so that we can build towards a more evidence-based approach to human rights protection.